especially someone who's at their computer all day. They're very stressed, they're tense, they tend to just be already up here when they're talking to you, and they don't even realize that they're doing it. And then you go like, take a
pushing the grocery cart down the aisle.
Breathe a little bit. And they're like, I am breathing. Relax your shoulders. I am relaxed. I'm like,
relaxed.
Wait. And then they go, and I'm like, and then, no, it feels great, doesn't it? Down here with your shoulders down.
10 seconds later.
And then they're back up here. I'm like, no. Shh. Just tilt your head to the side a little bit. See, it's just pulling. Just let it go. Let it go.
Hey guys, welcome back. Beren and Andrew again, chatting, folding some towels. We're going back to the topic of stretching because there's a new fad that's been coming out. We want to kind of touch on it since we didn't on that first one about stretching. Therapy and stretch therapists.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about that new fad?
So I'm torn on it. The reason that I'm torn is because it seems like it would feel nice, I guess, but when I'm thinking more for like functional, like improvement of your ability to perform functional tasks, or really helping with relieving pain or symptoms that we may see normally, you might get some temporary relief, but you're not loading any tissues when you do that. It's all passive.
Mm-hmm.
I can go and get a massage or something like that and probably get more out of it, actually.
Right, than just a plain stretch.
Yeah, and so that's kind of how I feel about it. And I think if folks want to go because it's like, it just feels nice to get stretched out, like it feels good. Maybe it gives me a little bit of temporary relief or something like that, and they're aware of it. All right, go for it. But I don't know if that's something that I would tell someone coming in for therapy if we're working on something specific. Like, yeah, go over to the stretch lab and, do that. Like, and then after that, come here and we'll see how. It's just
doesn't fit.
Yeah,
doesn't fit.
Yeah, I'm not.
I have that same thought. Like all these. We have athletes that come in, they're like, okay, I've got a strength coach, I've got a conditioning coach, I've got a position coach, I've got a chiropractor, you're my PT, I've got a stretch therapist. I'm like, how do you have all this time? Like, or money as well. Like, what are you doing? Sometimes more is not the right answer. Sometimes less is the answer, like no, I got to go see my stretch therapist. I got to go to my chiropractor. I go every week for this stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, but what are you seeing the benefit for? Do you go to practice right after? Do you go lift after? Like, no, I just go in for half an hour to get stretched out, and then I'm good. I feel great. Like you said, is it truly functionally doing anything for these athletes?
Yeah.
Like you said, hey, if you're an office worker or something like that, hey, it keeps me going, make sure my back doesn't bother me for the rest of the week. Cool. Maybe that is something that, it's a little bit of lower cost. It's not as expensive. But in my mind, it's another one of those like, are we just scamming people now to take their money?
Is it a money grab?
Yeah.
Well, and so the funny thing too that I always wondered is like, if say someone goes in and they're total hip, total knee, they're going and getting, stretched out there. Like, what happens if someone breaks somebody's hip precautions?
Right.
Without
they don't
really
necessarily know. Yeah.
And I mean, you've probably seen just how I have. People come out of a surgery, unfortunately, not really knowing what their hip precautions are or their knee precautions. For those of you that still don't know what I'm talking about, usually after you replace a joint, especially the hip, there's certain movements that they don't want you to do, or you can only do them to a certain range to help with the implant. Now, if you go to a stretch lab, I'm sure you can let them know, like, hey, I have these hip precautions, but, do they know that? Or
what's their background?
What is their background there?
I don't know.
Right. I just don't know.
I don't think there's any licensing required for it.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how that works. But
yeah, that's a great point. There's a lot of factors that go into stretching and mobility where are they well versed in it? Are they not? These are questions that all of our clients should be asking. If you are going to a stretch lab, maybe let us know. How has your interaction been? But to me, it's always these places popped up almost overnight, and they're charging almost similar fees to a PT session or chiropractic session. You're going in for half an hour and getting stretched. I don't necessarily see the benefit. And, to that point, I think I sent you an article earlier today about, they did a research study that just came out earlier this year talking about strengthening through an active range of motion and a full range of motion was equally as effective as static stretching for the sit and reach testing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a wild thing. Like, hey, just activating the muscles and moving them through their ranges of motion is just as effective as sitting there stretching for 30, 40 seconds. Like, I need to read the full article to go into depth, but that caught my eye as like, there's a lot. It's, again, one of those hot topics, ice or heat, stretch, no stretch. Like, do we actually even need to be stretching anymore?
Yeah.
What's your take on that? Do you still even use stretching with your clients?
I will. And usually it's if we're dealing with an area that they're having a hard time calming that area down. A common one may be like a upper trap or something like that, especially someone who's at their computer all day. They're very stressed, they're tense, they tend to just be already up here when they're talking to you, and they don't even realize that they're doing it. And then you go like, take a
pushing the grocery cart down the aisle.
Breathe a little bit. And they're like, I am breathing. Relax your shoulders. I am relaxed. I'm like,
relaxed.
Wait. And then they go, and I'm like, and then, no, it feels great, doesn't it? Down here with your shoulders down.
10 seconds later.
And then they're back up here. I'm like, no. Shh. Just tilt your head to the side a little bit. See, it's just pulling. Just let it go. Let it go. And so I think that there are times where, hey, let's get this area to calm down a little bit. Let's get you to calm down a little bit. Let's relax a little. Almost taking kind of like that yoga approach where it's very holistic, and we're really trying to calm the system down. Yeah, I'm all for it in that sense.
Right.
You know?
Almost a full kind of nervous system calm down. Let's ramp things down first.
Let's ramp it down.
Reset.
Now. But if I'm talking about an area that common, my hamstrings are tight.
Right.
Okay. I've been stretching them all the time. They're still tight. Okay. Why are we still stretching them?
Right.
The person cannot tolerate one Nordic curl.
Right.
They probably cannot tolerate a full range of motion hamstring curl under any load.
Any resistance, right?
You try to give them a glute bridge and their hamstrings cramp up.
I feel threatened right now. Like I feel like you're talking about me.
Then I gotta tell them like, I don't know if your hamstrings are tight because, they don't want to. They're overactive. I think they're tight because they're actually weak.
Yeah.
They can't tolerate a very good amount of movement.
Yep.
So last thing you want to do is go stretching them, because you're just turning them off even more.
Yep.
So you want to actually strengthen these muscles. And so that study that you mentioned with like strengthening through a full range of motion, I start thinking, well, I love getting people doing some type of hip hinge, some type of like RDL, maybe even a stiff leg deadlift at times to really like put the hamstrings on stretch. If they can tolerate, if we're dealing with an athlete or something like that, maybe doing a Nordic curl, maybe getting them on the glute ham machine and like trying to work on doing a glute ham raise, trying to work on the eccentric control on the way down. I love doing that. And you're taking that muscle through a full range of motion essentially, or trying to, as well as that person can tolerate.
Yep.
And usually afterwards they're like, oh, actually it does feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up a couple good points in terms of should we be strengthening instead of just stretching? And I think, again, research over the last couple of years has shown a lot about in terms of hamstrings, hip flexors. It's truly not stretch more. It's more let's activate it. Let's turn it on. Let's use it through this full range of motion, because it's tight not because it's inherently stuck and stiff. Mm-hmm. It just is not tolerating the activity that you're putting it through. And so it's responding by tightening up and holding it kind of like a protective mechanism.
Yeah.
It's not that this muscle is tight. It's that your brain is going, hey, if you use this thing past a certain degree, I am going to cramp. I will pull. I will hurt you.
Yeah.
Because you haven't trained me. You haven't taught me how to move forward. For sure.
And so that's something that I try to emphasize to people. And for some folks, I'll give them the calf stretch, I'll give them the hamstring stretch, but I also have to educate them. Okay, this is why we're doing this right now.
Right.
But the goal is to get this area stronger. I'd rather us activate that muscle, activate. Then after the end of the session or something, or later today, I really just needed to stretch them out. It just feels good for me to do that.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But know what you're doing when you're stretching them out. And then
why are we doing this actual activity?
Yeah, understand what we should be doing to help in the long term.
Yeah.
And usually when I have that conversation with folks, they're like, oh, so it's actually weak. That's why it's like that. I'm like,
Yeah. And the whole kind of down regulation of the system too, right? You go back to the scientific basis. Your stretch receptors turn off the muscle. The whole point of that stretch reflex is to prevent your joints from going the wrong way, essentially. Hey, I'm stretching this out. My bicep is saying, hey, tricep, turn off. You can't go any further. We're done with this movement. So stretching and then to go work out afterwards is not necessarily the best thing.
Yeah.
But in instances of, hey, we do want to downregulate the system. Let's bring things down. Let's calm things down a little bit. Yeah, we've used it with biofeedback in terms of that same thing, is teaching them, hey, this is how you can relax. Contract, relax techniques, static stretching, these different kind of mobility things that, hey, let's bring the whole system down. Your entire parasympathetic, let's activate it, let's turn things down, let's calm you down. Now we can reset. Because sometimes that is the problem, is walk around like Frankenstein because of all the stress, all the tension, work, school, life, finances.
And you're just tensed up all the time.
Okay, let's go lift weights.
Yeah.
No, maybe not.
Maybe just bring your shoulders down a little bit.
I still joke with some of our athletes. They come in, dragging, locked up. Hey, today's a therapeutic nap day. Today we're just going in and taking a nap. They're like, really? I'm like, if that's what your body needs, sometimes let's go take a nap.
Sleep this one off a little bit, and then we'll get back to it later.
Yeah.
You mentioned mobility. So like that word to me is become so funny, because I think that people will interchange mobility, flexibility, stability.
Yep.
And it's like, no, these are all different. And this could be me just being very like about it, but I feel the need to like tell people like, no, that's not mobility.
Yeah. Let's dive into that.
That's flexibility.
Right.
Like, no, that is stability. So like when you say mobility, what do you mean when you say it? Just like for the audience, so that they kind of understand what that means.
When we're talking about flexibility versus mobility, in my mind, and again, everyone has a different perception, right? I always joke with my clients, I'm like, English was my second language. So sometimes I have to go actually look up the definition of words to understand, because I've only understand it through the context of how other people have used it or how I've read it. So I don't actually know what the word means. And then I'm like, I've been using that thing wrong for 20 years. Like I got to stop saying that word, I don't think that word means what you think it means,
It's close. It's like around the corner, but
right.
it's
So the way I understand it with flexibility is, hey, flexibility, we're talking about muscles and tendons and ligaments that have that ability to flex and to go through some of that range of motion changes. Mobility, I'm thinking more of joint movements, big component movements. We're talking about knee joint mobility, hip joint mobility. How are these moving in space and time? Like we're looking really at kind of more of those fundamental kind of structures. And that a part of mobility is flexibility. Can't get the joint to move if the flexibility is not there. If you're stuck, your hip mobility is not going anywhere. But I'm not talking about hamstring mobility. We're talking about hamstring flexibility. So that's how I can understand the interchange of the two words.
Yeah. Because I'll see some people be like, I worked on this mobility drill, and then they're doing like they're just doing a static hamstring stretch. Or
don't judge the painted nails, right? If anyone watches.
They're doing a calf stretch, and I'm like, well, you're not even really moving. So,
right.
But in mobility, like mobile,
you're moving through something.
Yeah, we got to move through some type of range. And so, I think that it is a little bit of a combination of flexibility too, because you're probably using as much of the flexibility that you have, but still being able to move the joint through a decent amount of range, right? And so when I'll see people actually doing mobility drills, I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
They're actually doing mobility stuff.
Yep.
They're actually moving. They're doing maybe like a 90-90 hip box or shin box drill, or they're doing like a can opener exercise. They're doing a squat and reach. You know, they're doing these things where it's like, okay, your body is moving. You're challenging the mobility of those joints versus I'm just gonna do a static hold,
Right.
or I'm gonna do a series of stretches and then call it a mobility drill.
Right.
And I'm like,
maybe a stretching flow,
I'm
maybe a
just
yoga
like,
flow,
that
but
might
not
be
a
a yoga flow, I think, but I don't know how. Yeah, that's just me.
Yeah,
That's just
and I
me.
mean,
I get on my little soapbox about this,
there's a whole host of like this could be a whole separate podcast, right? Mobility, like we were talking about calf stretches. I almost rarely get people on a calf board stretch unless it is, again, we're down regulating. Today's a recovery day. We're turning everything off. Otherwise, I'm actually doing more like a stair. We're standing off the edge of a stair, grab a kettlebell, you're going through the range of motion. Your first set, lighter weight, lower reps, slow, controlled into the eccentric, hold it at the bottom through the stretch, now activate through the full range of motion.
Yeah.
All the way up onto your toe as far as you can go. Hold it there for a second, now bring it back down. So that, I can put that into the kind of the mobility. We're going through the full range of motion of the joint. We're trying to activate, then relax the muscle back and forth in a functional pattern. So there's a lot of these caveats of it's not just a shin box drill, but now you can add a little bit of activation to it. You can add some more components. So that mobility side of things gets much, much bigger as well.
Yeah. And I think that's important for folks to know. So when they say mobility, you're actually moving.
Right.
You're mobile. So please, if you have learned anything from this, please be mobile when you're doing mobility drills.
Static stretching is not
static.
Mobility.
No, they're different. They're different.
Cool. Well, I think we've hit stretching again. Definitely let us know your thoughts on stretch therapy, static stretching, see what you guys have experienced. Again, I've never gone to a stretch therapist, just kind of feedback from some of our clients and stuff. So definitely interested to see what people actually are using it for and if it's actually fitting within their stuff. So
yeah.
Again, thanks again for sticking around. We don't know when the next one will come out. We don't know how long it'll be, but we appreciate you sticking around.
All right, y'all.